lanzamos.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for participating. My name is Andrea de Luna, and I am a part of Repsol Foundation volunteering team. I'm going to explain the project a bit, and then we will begin the activity. The volunteering week's objective is for people who form part of Repsol to work together for a social purpose and respond to the social and environment needs we have in our society. This week, in 25 countries, more than 1,000 participants from the company will stop a while and dedicate it to very diverse activities with the purpose of improving things. People are the strongest force to change the world. Precisely, the people that work in companies make up more than 50% of the population. We are very busy people and that never have time to stop and think about dedicating time to social matters. However, you are people with great skills and potential to bring value to the world. That is why we believe in the importance of companies like Repsol offering these spaces to their employees to be able to stop and reflect and take up these social and environmental concerns that we all have. In conclusion, Simple values these types of activities. Many of us can question if with a short scheduled activity we can change the world. The world doesn't change with only one activity, but it does with very small gesture and with many people in many places doing small things. That is how we are going to create a real social movement. This is why I encourage to take advantage of this moment, to forget about all the problems, the global pandemic work, and take advantage of listening, assimilating, and taking notes, and also enjoy yourself. Without further delay, I leave you with Celia Conde from the Pau Costa Foundation entity, who will lead the activity. Celia, please.
Thank you very much, Andrea. And thanks to all of you connecting from different parts of the world, Asia, Russia, Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia. It is a very true honor for the Pau Costa Foundation to be able to address so many different countries and cultures at the same time. One of the Sustainable Development Goals is climate action, which advocates immediate action to mitigate the consequences that we are already experiencing as a result of climate change. One of many natural disasters that we already face is extreme wildfires, as we have recently witnessed in Chile or Australia. For this reason, we are very grateful to Repsol for presenting this opportunity for us to participate in this third Repsol International Volunteer Week. We are very delighted to join you throughout the day. My name is Celia Conde, and I am a journalist, and I work in the communication area of the Pau Costa Foundation, which is a non-profit entity dedicated to wildfire prevention and understanding fire ecology. We also educated to youngest in classrooms and raise awareness in civil society while working to improve extinction and especially prevention of wildfires, as we all face the climate emergency. And in this presentation, we have the honor of having Juan Caamaño, a consultant and international expert in wildfires. Caamaño will share his experience as a trainer of forest firefighters in Indonesia. He will explain the situation of Asian countries in comparison with other regions of the planet, and he will offer a different vision about fire, which many of you probably didn't know. Juan is a forestry engineer. He has worked for many years as a helicarrier brigade technician and head of barns in different national services. In 2017, Juan began his adventure as an instructor of the official fire department of operations in wildfire in Indonesia. All these experiences he has always combined with the work of the Pau Costa Foundation, of which he's a founder and head of the training area. So without further ado, let me remind you that during the 40 minutes that Juan will speak, you can leave your questions on the YouTube chat, since the last 15 minutes of this lecture will be dedicated to answering all these questions. Bear in mind that this webinar also is being recorded, and some minutes after the session is over, you will be able to share this video with anyone who you think might be interested in watching it. Also, if you have any unanswered questions, please don't hesitate to write directly to an email that will appear now in the chat room. And therefore, we will communicate your concerns or doubts to the speakers. Please take this opportunity to ask whatever you want. Remember that no question is silly. So we are here for that. We are delighted to be able to accompany you, to learn with you. And finally, we invite you to share these messages that Juan will show in the last slide of his talk. Feel free to share all the messages that Juan will share with you, with your family and friends throughout the social networks using the hashtag Repsol volunteers. And this will be kind of a small contribution to the worldwide climate action. Although it seems minimal, if we all come together, we can make very meaningful changes. So thank you very much for your attention, and I will stop speaking. And now, Juan, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Celia, and thank you very much, Andrea, for this presentation. So let me begin sharing my screen. That's the first thing. And let's start with the presentation. Okay. Okay, there we go. So, hi everybody, and my name, as Celia says, is Juan Caamaño, and I will be joining you for about 45 minutes, 1 hour, to speak to you a little bit about my experience about a fire. And first of all, I would like to start explaining a little bit about myself, so you understand a little bit more about fire and how during my professional career, I changed my view about what fire is, okay? So I started fighting fires in 2000. I'm forestry engineer. I studied a master's degree in forestry engineer. And while I was studying in Spain, forestry engineer, they taught me that fire, it's one of the bad things that can happen in the forest. So basically I was taught that fire, it's bad, and that I had to take fire out of the forest ecosystem that I was going to be working in. Okay. So basically what I did from 2000, when I finished my degree, was to start fighting fires. So from 2000 to 2009, basically what I did is jump into a helicopter with firefighters and just fight fires all over Spain. And so my vision of fire was my enemy. So that was what I thought about what fire was. It was my enemy that I have to combat it at any cost. And society put a lot of efforts and resources to make that happen, at least in many countries of the world. And I was one of those efforts to put fire out, a forestry technician working as a helitack crew leader with helicopters and firefighters. So again, my vision of fire was that fire is bad and I had to take it out of the ecosystem. Okay, it was an evil thing. I was taught that, and society put all their resources to me to put those fires out and take fire out of the ecosystems. But we were losing the war. This war against fire, I had the feeling that I was losing it. Okay, and the people around me felt the same thing. Okay, as long as we kept investing more and more money into resources, the problem of fires were not going down. Instead, they were going up. We were seeing the biggest and more intense fires ever in these places, okay, where we put so much effort to put it out. So we were doing something wrong. So in 2009, something changed in my career, in my professional career. Basically, I started looking abroad, and I traveled to the United States, I traveled to South Africa, I traveled to Argentina, Peru, and started watching what fire is in those ecosystems. And I, I was taught that fire had an enormous role on some ecosystems in the world. So from that point, I started changing my view about what a fire is. Rather than being an enemy, I started to understand like a nature, a nature tool for the ecosystems to manage itself. Okay, so it was a natural tool to manage the land, to manage the ecosystem, to maintain biodiversity. That's what I was taught from 2009 in many of the places that I travel. So rather than trying to put it out, what I did is now I start to lightning fire in ecosystem. As you can see in this picture here, that's me, and I'm lighting fire rather than putting it out. So it completely changed the way I saw fire. I see fire now. Okay, completely changed when I started to relate ecosystems, fire, and the role of the fire in it. Okay. Again, during this period of my life, I started to study the relationship also between fire behavior, and weather conditions. Okay, because that will give different types of fires and intensity, and what we call biodiversity. Okay, the effects of different types of fire on the ecosystems. So from fire being an enemy, now I understand that fire, it's an ally that can help us a lot with the problem of wildfires all over the world. But then in 2017, again, something changed in my professional career. They invited me to join Indonesia, to fight fires in Indonesia, and to train firefighters in Indonesia to fight fires in a modern way, okay, in a way that we do it in Spain or Canada or California or many other places in the world. So it was a big challenge. And the reason is, even though I've been fighting fires for 15, 20 years, it was a big challenge for me because the environment was completely different. The fires were completely different. And the skills and the resources that you need to put out this type of fires were completely different from what I come from. So obviously it was a big challenge for me. So the first thing that I had to do is to learn what those fires were, okay? And what was the problems around these fires in Indonesia or in Southeast Asia, to teach people how to fight them. So I needed to find out what was the root of the problem, what were the difference of this type of fires from where I come from. And I had to teach that to the firefighters and the way they had to implement operations in the ground to put out those fires. So I learned a lot, and it was a completely different view of fires from what I came from. Okay. And I hope you're able to see now during this presentation how things change along the way of my professional career. So, but first, let's start from the beginning. Okay, that's the key. Start from the beginning. What is fire? Okay, exactly what is fire? Fire is a chemical reaction that needs three things. It needs heat, it needs fuel, and it needs oxygen. Okay, so imagine if you have a lighter, what will be the fuel? Easy. The fuel in the lighter will be the gas in it. Okay, sorry. It will be the gas in it. What will be the heat? It will be the spark of the lighter. Okay, and the oxygen is in the atmosphere. Okay, but if we talk about vegetation fires or forest fires, that's different from a lighter. Okay, so what will be the fuel on a vegetation fire? Well, dead fuel, basically dead vegetation that is dry. As you can see in this picture over here, there's a lot of dry fuel. Okay, what we call dry vegetation, it will be dry vegetation, and we call it, the firefighters, we call it fuel, dry fuel. Okay, and that's what it's burning. And again, the oxygen is in the atmosphere, and the heat can come from the lighter or any natural source like lightning or maybe a volcano. Okay, so there's natural and human causes behind fires. Okay, but basically, that's what you need to have: fire, heat, fuel, and oxygen. Okay, those are the three main things that you need to have fire. Okay, so based on this, and what you just heard, that you just need oxygen, heat, and fuel, well, it's easy to understand that basically fire has been shaping the earth for millions of years. Since we have fuel, okay, this is a pretty old forest. This is prehistoric forest, okay, from the Jurassic or Triassic era. So as you can see, we have wood. So when this dries up, it was easy to catch on fire. There was volcanoes, there was thunderstorms, lightning. So it was pretty easy to have fires in that time. And you must think that even in that time, that period in Earth, the atmosphere had a bigger percentage of oxygen in the atmosphere as what we have right now. So basically the scenario was even more flammable, okay, because there was more oxygen in the atmosphere in that time of the Earth. Okay, so have that in mind. Fire has been shaping the Earth for millions of years, has been there for millions of years, and the ecosystems and the vegetation have evolved with fire around them. Okay, and that's key to understand that, because we have learned that not too long ago, that was like that fire had a natural role in in ecosystems around the world. So as you can see, so let's watch this video that it will give you a general view of what fire is around the world.
Some parts of the world burn every year. Australia is one of those places. In central Australia are grassland fires. Areas in the north are comprised of eucalyptus woodland and savanna fires. Agricultural fires dominate Asia and Southeast Asia. Crop cultivation fires in China, Thailand, and the Punjab region of India can be seen here. Catastrophic forest fires in Russia, where it takes a long time for the vegetation to recover, can also be seen. Africa really is the fire continent. As healthy green vegetation dries, these areas are consumed by sweeping waves of fire that move from north to south and south to north each season. The fires in Africa are primarily grassland fires, but there are also management fires associated with agriculture and maintenance. In South America, you see pastoral maintenance fires in the Amazon basin and fires that are used to clear the tropical rainforest for agriculture and grazing. In the United States, you can see fires in the southeast associated with forestry and agriculture. The recent fires in Texas and wildfires in the west are also seen.
So as you were able to see from the video, basically our world is on fire, as it says in the presentation. So all over the world there is fires. There's fires in Australia, there's fires in Southeast Asia, there's fires in Russia. Here are satellite images from different parts of the world. Okay, here in the upper right corner, you would see fires from Siberia this year. Okay, thousands of hectares has been burning in Siberia this year and last year too. The upper left photo, it's from California from this year. I'm not sure if you're aware, but it's being at the moment one of the worst year in the world in California history regarding forest fires, huge fires. And the problem is a lot of big fires are raging at the same time, putting a lot of pressure into the emergency response organizations in California. Here down in the bottom, in the left, you would see fires burning in the Amazon basin. And basically this is a slash and burns that happens every year. And depending on the weather conditions and depending on the ability of the fuel to burn, this slash and burns can get into big wildfires, can become big wildfires. Same thing happens in Indonesia. This is a photo from 2015 from Borneo. And you can see hundreds of fires burning for slash and burns and then do plantation. And we'll talk a little bit about that. So basically, our fire world, and it's increased it's increasing because of climate change. The temperature, it's rising up, and when the temperature rises up, normally fire increase and fire activity increases in many ecosystems that we're not supposed to burn. And there are some scientists that even they said that we're living in the Pyrocene era. Okay. And but you have to think that Russia, Indonesia, Amazon, and California are the same ecosystems burning? Is the same field burning? Is the same vegetation burning? No, not all. Not all the vegetation and ecosystems that you're seeing in these pictures is the same. And the consequences of this fire will be completely different in different parts of the world and different parts of basically the world. And that's what we're going to talk a little bit about, okay? The relationship between fire and ecosystems. That relationship, it's called what we call fire regime, okay? So the relationship of fire with ecosystem is known as fire regime. And this is related with the severity, the intensity, the spatial scale, and the season that takes place those fires, okay? As you can see in these two pictures, in the one in the left side, it's a small fire. It's a really low intense fire burning the needles of the pines, okay? But if you compare it with the photo on the right side, it's completely different type of fire. This fire is more intense, it's more severe, okay? So the consequences of this fires in the surface will be completely different, okay? That's what we call pyrodiversity, okay? The different effects that fire can have into the ecosystem based on the severity and the intensity, on the season, or the spatial scale. That's what we call fire regime, that relationship, okay? So different ecosystems has different fire regimes, okay? And that's what a little bit we're going to talk now about. Normally, the forest fire regimes are primarily driven by climate, fuel, and people, okay? It is important for you to understand that all these factors combined, okay, create a mosaic of fire regime around the world, okay? So what you're seeing, this is a map where you're seeing it's a fire activity in the world, okay? You will be able to see that there is a lot of fire activity around the equator, okay? Where tropical rainforests are, okay? Why is that? Well, a lot has to do with with land use change, and we'll see that deeper in the presentation, okay? But there's places where there's a lot of fire activity, human, basically. And there's other places where there's no fire activity because this is desert, okay? This is a desert or high mountains, okay? Or it's pretty cold to have fires, okay? So fire activity in the world depends on climate and also depends on type of ecosystems and vegetation. And that's, so having that in mind, Nature Conservancy, it's a nonprofit organization from the United States, identified 3 broad categories of vegetation responding to fire. Basically, they classified into 3: fire dependent, that ecosystems that need fire, okay? They need fire to survive. If there's no fire in those ecosystems, it would change to another thing, okay? Different. There's another type of ecosystems called fire sensitive. And there's another one, fire independent. Let's go a little bit into this. So fire independent ecosystems. Well, basically it's those ecosystems where fire normally plays little or no role at all, okay, in that ecosystems. Maybe because there's no vegetation in it, like the deserts. You're seeing in this pictures Namibia desert in South Africa. There's no way you can have a fire in this type of environment and ecosystem because there's basically no vegetation ready to burn, and there's no continuity in the field to let the fire grow, Okay, same thing happens in the photo underneath. Basically, the conditions in that environment, in that ecosystem, are not the right ones to have fires burning in it. So there's ecosystems where there's no fire, okay, at all. Then we have fire-dependent ecosystems. Okay, that's where I live. I live in Spain. It's a Mediterranean climate, and we have a Mediterranean ecosystems, just like California or just like Australia. Okay, Australia, California, and the Mediterranean region, we have a climate that it's pretty linked with fires. Okay, it's humid during the winter and autumn, but it's really dry and it's really heat, and it's really, the temperature is really high during the summer. Great conditions to have fires. Okay, so fire dependent ecosystems are those where fire is essential. Once again, it's essential, and the species have evolved adaptation to respond possibly to fire and to facilitate fire spread. Do you imagine living with fires for millions and millions and millions of years? That's what happened with some of the ecosystems that we have now on Earth. They have evolved for millions of years with fire. Okay. Well, that's what I just talked before. Okay, from those photos that you see dinosaurs with ecosystems burning behind them. Okay, fire in these areas is an absolutely essential process. Okay, for cleaning, maintaining biodiversity, open a space for different species, etc. Okay, so it's crucial that we maintain fire in these ecosystems. This type of ecosystems, they're awfully called fire adapted or fire maintained ecosystems. Okay, so fire basically in these areas, have this in mind. It's an absolutely essential process. So what do you think it would happen if we take fire out of these ecosystems? Well, you can see this picture, and you can see in the left side of the dirt road, okay, there's an fuel structure or vegetation. If this is a place where we have reintroduced fire, this is a fire-prone ecosystem. This is a fire-dependent ecosystem. This is in Spain. And as you can see here, we have been doing burnings for years. But in this other side, there's no burning taking place. So basically, when you take out fire from a fire-dependent ecosystem, you're changing the forest structure. You're changing the fuel structure. So this is what it had to look under a normal fire regime condition. But us as human, we decided that we wanted to take fire out of fire-dependent ecosystem. Then our forest structure changed from this one to this other one. And now we have completely different fire behavior outcomes. Here you will expect to have a low intensity fire, okay? Not so very harmful for the ecosystem. But in this case, you are more likely to have pretty big intense fire, putting a lot of pressure to the respawn resources. Maybe some species are not adapted to this type of fire regime because it's too intense or too severe. Okay, so losing part of the biodiversity in this by having big wildfires. And this is basically what it's happening in other places of the world. California 220. That's just right now. This is what's happening at the moment in California. Biggest wildfire ever. Like if there was an atomic bomb. This is creek fire. It was like a month ago, and it keeps burning. And it's impressive to see how huge ecosystems that have been living there for hundreds of years probably will be lost by this fire. It's a huge change of systems taking place right now in California because of this huge and intense and severe fires that we're having, because we modified the fire regime in this landscape. Going back to the other photo, if you see this photo, this is how the structures of the forest changes in only 5-10 years. Imagine taking fire out from an ecosystems for hundreds of years. This is what happened in California, or it's happening in many countries of the world, like Mediterranean region, Australia. We have take fire out of fire-dependent ecosystems. So fuel load had increased enormous in the last 10, 20 years. The result, you have that in the pictures, okay? The biggest wildfire ever. And now we're linking this fire with climate change, and their intensity and their severity, it's increasing dramatically. Same thing in Australia. If you heard the news in December 2019, Australia was having one of the worst fire season ever. Okay, basically because of a combination of, as I just said, climate change and fuel load coming from eliminating fire from those ecosystems. Okay, thinking that humans could possibly take fire out of those ecosystems, and we cannot. You can see it from the pictures. We cannot. We're losing that idea of trying to protect the ecosystem from fire by taking it out from it, rather than putting the right fire in the right moment, in the right place. That's the way we should keep fire-dependent ecosystems. And another one, it's fire-sensitive ecosystems. Okay, species in these areas lack of adaptation to respond to fire and mortality. It's high even when fire intensity is very low. So, and the vegetation structure and composition of it normally tend to inhibit ignition and fire spread. Okay. So basically, fire-sensitive ecosystems have not evolved with fire as a significant recurring process. Okay, so they're not very flammable, as you can see in the picture here above. Okay, it's pretty thick terrain with thick forests, really humid. Normally, the ground it's wet. Okay, it's pretty floody. So it's not the type of environment where you will likely to have a fire and the fire will spread. Okay, so rainforests, tropical forests, and other ecosystems are fire-sensitive ecosystems. Okay, what happens when you put fire in fire-sensitive ecosystems? We have seen what happens if you take out fire from fire-dependent. What happens? Well, as it says before, species in this area's lack of adaptation. So what will happen? Basically, the ecosystems will change and will change dramatically fast. And it will be another thing. Okay, it will be a completely another thing. You see from these pictures fire burning pretty close to the rainforest. And you see there's a lot of logs and poles just on the ground. And the reason is because the trees in rainforest, they don't need to grow really deep their roots into the ground because there's water in the surface, so they don't need to go really deep into the soil. Just like in Mediterranean regions, our trees, they have really long, deep roots to find water. But they in Southeast Asian rainforests, they don't need it. So basically the roots are really surface. So that's one of the first things that it burns. The roots, once they burn, the pole just falls down and keeps burning on the ground. Okay, so fire-sensitive ecosystems, if you put fire, you will change to different things and it will be really hard to recover that area. In California, Mediterranean regions, it's, let's say, easier to go back to the ecosystem that was there before the fire. It has a really natural regeneration, okay, because it's adapted, that vegetation is adapted to fire, but in this case, it will be completely different. There will be no natural regeneration because there's no bank seed on the floor, okay? It will be completely different ecosystems and it will be really hard to go back to where it was. But let's go back to Southeast Asia. So what do we have in Southeast Asia? Well, basically, a lot of the surface in this part of the world it's covered by tropical forest. Okay, the conditions are the right ones to have this beautiful forest called rainforest. Okay, and basically, if we based on the category that TNC, the Natural Conservancy, we obviously we are in a fire sensitive ecosystem. From Indonesia, Singapore, Malaysia, okay, there's Cambodia, all those area, not all of it, because there has been a lot of changes in the last decades, but is rainforest, okay, is fire sensitive ecosystems. So why it's burning? Why Indonesia is burning? Let's focus more in Indonesia. Okay, that's where I've been studying in the last 3 years. So why it's burning? Why a fire sensitive ecosystem is burning? And some years are really bad, like 2019, like 2015, or 1997. What's happening in that part of the world to have fires burning in those ecosystems? Well, there's two main forces that drives fire in this part of the world. One is climate. It's El Nino, La Nina event. I'm pretty sure you have heard of it, okay? But if not, I will explain a little bit about it and what we call Indian Ocean dipole too. But I will just focus on El Nino and La Nina event. I will not talk about Indonesian Indian Ocean dipole, okay? But let me talk about this too. And then land use change by human. Okay, those are the two main forces that drives fire in Indonesia. So El Nino, what is El Nino? El Nino is an irregular periodic variation in winds and sea surface over the tropical Eastern Pacific Ocean. You can see this image. This is South America, this is Australia, Indonesia, okay? So it's a variation of sea surface temperature that comes along with a variation of winds coming from the west or coming from the east. And we will see now the impact that has on Indonesia and Southeast Asia. So when we are under El Nino event, that means that the temperature of the Pacific Ocean is over the average, okay? You can see here the pictures, okay, of the anomalies, of the temperature anomalies in that part of the ocean, Pacific Ocean. That has an impact on climate, okay, around the world, has an impact on climate around the world. Basically, in Indonesia and Southeast Asia, as you can see, the conditions will be drier. Why is that? Well, because the wind is coming from, the winds changing, and all the humid winds goes from east to west, pushing rain and humidity to South America. Okay. When that happens, like 2015, well, we can see that there's a lot of fires burning and there's a lot of pollution, a lot of haze. Okay. This is the rainfall in September 2015 compared to the average. There was no rain in South Borneo or in South Sumatra. Okay. And these are the satellite pictures. 2015, September 2015, October was really bad. And it was kind of linked with El Nino event. Here, it's a graphic where you can see when you have El Nino, it's in red, La Nina, it's in blue. And here are fire surface, a number of fires in Indonesia in the last 20 years. And you can see there's an incredible link between El Nino event with surface and number of fires taking place in that part of the world, Indonesia. Okay, so what do we have right now? Right now, this photo over here is from, well, this from the 15th of October. That's 2 days ago. Now we're in La Nina event. Okay, that's why now Indonesia and South Asia, they're not having really big problems with fires, basically because it's higher than the average. okay, because we have La Nina event, so no fires at the moment. It doesn't mean we have ignitions. There is a lot of ignitions taking place in that part of the world, but the thing is that fuel conditions and climate and weather conditions are not the right ones to have these fires that we had in 2015 or 2019. So, but I want you to take this part. This is La Nina, the winds that drives humid humid air blows from west to east. Okay, so there's more rain happening in this part of the world. But look in Argentina. Argentina, it's drier. Okay, it's drier. So this is what is happening at the moment in Argentina, 2020. They're having one of the worst fire seasons ever. Okay, big plume dominated fires, wind driven fires. They're having a really bad fire season, and somehow it's linked with La Nina event. Okay, we're not having fires in Indonesia, but we're having fires in Argentina. Okay, so La Nina has a big impact on fire. It's a big force that drives fires in different places of the world. But once again, let's go back to Indonesia. Land use change on the land use. That's another of the main factors that drives fires in Indonesia. So how do we go from basically this photo over here of a rainforest, beautiful rainforest, to palm oil plantation or pulp? Okay, this is a change that happens because there was a big change in the agro-industrial systems. Okay, this transformation happens in 1990 in Indonesia, but there's also a land use change regarding to slash and burn agriculture activities. But slash and burn has been happening in Indonesia and Southeast Asia for thousands of years. Okay, thousands of years, farmers have been burning their land to cultivate and grow. But the thing is that at a smaller scale, now it's happening at a huge scale, many people in places where there were no people. Now they're burning and putting fire. And many of those burns and fires, they just escape and they're under no control underneath under them. So it becomes forest fires. So, but to produce these changes, basically to plant palm oil and pulp, there was fires behind. Okay, you cannot make this change in this part of the world without a fire. You need a fire. It's cheaper than using other mechanisms, and here you can see the relationship between the Global and Developing Index of Indonesia and land use change. Okay, so you can see this index shows the incredible growth of Indonesia economy in the last 20 years. And obviously it's related in part to rainforest and pit ecosystems loss. And you can see here this graphic where from 1995, basically 49%, okay, 49% of rainforest in Sumatra has been lost. Okay, in 1985, it was 58 of the percentage of the island was covered by rainforest. By 2009, it was only 29. Okay, but hey, guess what? These two pictures are from Spain and France. What you see in the left picture, this is olive oil. Okay, Spain, Portugal, and Italy were the first producers and the first exporters of olive oil in the world. And also we have vineyards, hundreds and thousands of hectares of vineyards. We export wine all over the world, from France, Portugal, Spain, Italy. So the transformation that Indonesia is suffering at the moment, we have already suffered it, but we suffered 100 years ago. Okay, not at the moment. We are not suffering. We're suffering a different transformation now. Now we're incrementing our forest surface because of rural areas abandoned. But we did this transformation longer ago than Indonesia. Indonesia, Malaysia, this part of the world is, and places like Amazon, they're transforming their land as we did 100 years ago, as we did 100 years ago. We lost ecosystems to 100 years ago. So let me put you an example so you can see how this change happens. We're going to look at this part of Indonesia. This is this is Sumatra. Okay, this is the region of Jambi. And we have this national park called Bedebek National Park in Sumatra Island. Okay, that is one of the largest understood swamp forests in Southeast Asia. Okay, one of the largest understood swamp forests. Okay, that photo it was a satellite image. It's taken in 1986. I want you to take really close this part and this other part of the picture and how it has changed over the years. Okay, this is 1991, and you see it will start, and there's a big change between 1991 and 1998. Okay, you can see the settlements, human settlements, is increasing really fast, and while it's increasing, the national forest is reducing its surface. Okay, look, this is human settlements, new settlements in 1998, and as you move forward, new settlements coming in. Okay, but how do you open these spaces to establish towns and people? Well, obviously you need to do it with fire. Okay, and what do you grow there? Where do you grow? You grow in the area you slash and burn to cultivate. Okay, and this is how it looks now. This is for 1916. As you can see, it's huge change of human settlements, and then the national park has been has decreased its surface by the burns that happens every year in that park. This is the national park, as you can see, and this is all the fires happening around it. Okay, this is from 2019, satellite images from October 2019 in Jambi. And this is a picture of the national forest. And as you can see here, all the settlements and the fire taking place from that settlements pushing the national park. Okay, so there's a lot of pressure that it's suffering, this national park, and obviously if this keeps continuing, probably it will disappear in the next 10, 20 years. So this is how it looks like from the air. Okay, oops, sorry. This is how it looks like from the air. I will go fast. Okay. Everything that I'm explaining, this is how it looks when you go deeper into the ground. And basically, when you have so many fires burning at the same time, it's really difficult to try to put them out or suppress them or try to implement an organization or a coordination system to try to respond to all those fires that you can see from satellite images down south in Indonesia. So hundreds and thousands of hectares burning at the same time. This is a flying helicopter, so you can imagine how big this is. And this was only one fire. There was hundreds of fires in this part of South Sumatra. Okay. Another thing that I want you to check is that basically you can see a little bit of flame, but there's a lot of white smoke. I'll explain now what is that. That's peat. Okay. One of the biggest problem is peat fires. Indonesia has rainforest, but it has another type of ecosystem really sensible to fire, and that's peat fire. Okay, what's peat? Peat basically it's organic soil that normally it's underneath the water. Okay, in floated areas, that's where the right environment to create peat. Okay, and normally it's wet. There's no fire that can burn this in the normal conditions. But what we have done as humans in Indonesia is to drain all that area where peat is through canals, as you can see in these pictures. Okay, we build these canals, we drain the area, and now we plant, we burn it, we plant, we burn it, we plant, and we burn it. Okay, that's how it works. So you need to drain, and then when you drain the area, the peat suddenly dries up, and now it becomes fuel. Okay, it becomes fuel. The thing is that peat, it's a carbon store. Okay, it has megatons of carbon dioxide stored in it. It's been storing carbon dioxide for millions of years, and now we're, by these fires, we're emitting it, we're putting it back into the atmosphere, and that's a huge, huge, huge problem. So as I said to you, this is how it should look like, peat ecosystems in a natural environment. Okay, it's wet underneath the water. So peatlands normally in their natural state act as most efficient carbon store of full terrestrial ecosystem, and has been doing that for millions of years. But what we're doing, what are we doing? We build these canals, we drain it, we're putting it available to burn, and then when to do a slash and burns, and that burns while it can start burning the soil and the peat, and emits a lot of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, which contributes to global warming. Okay, so as you can see in this graphic, this is the CO2 emissions for Borneo, Kalimantan. Okay, and you can see in 2000, and as you can see this is a comparison between 2015 and 2009, and you can see there's huge amounts of megatons per day of carbon dioxide emitted from those fires, from peat fires. The reason of draining peat is because it's organic soil and has a lot of nutrients. So palm oil and acacia and eucalyptus that are planted in those, they grow really fast. They grow really fast. Just to have that in mind, in Spain, to grow eucalyptus before we cut it, we need 12 years to do that. In Indonesia, you only need 4 years. So imagine the difference. So, but the problem is not only carbon dioxide. It is a huge problem, and it's a worldwide problem. It produces, okay? The smoke that peat produces, it's more toxic that the normal fires produces, okay? As you can see, this is from 2015 fires, 2019, sorry, South Sumatra, Borneo, just burning hundreds of fires and putting a lot of smoke into the atmosphere. And that smoke will be pushed by winds to Malaysia, Singapore, and many other parts of the world. This is pollution. This is what you can see. This is a huge, huge problem, okay? Because it's related with 200 or 300,000 premature death in Indonesia, okay, coming from because of lung diseases and because of smoke. So this is a very health issue in this part of the world. So this is basically the problem that we can see in that part of the world: land use, climate, etc. What is the Indonesian government doing? Well, for sure, it's putting a lot of effort to try to put these fires out, okay, and try to control. So they introduced a peatland restoration program in 2060s, basically to prevent forest fires, okay. They don't allow people to keep burning peat, okay, to grow any type of agriculture vegetation system. They force a lot of the surface in Indonesia is given to the private companies as concessions to grow and plant and pulp or palm oil. So since 2015, the Indonesian government has forced private companies to invest in prevention and to respond to forest fires. And that's where I come in. That's where I started working in 2016, 2017 because of this. There was a big investment on respond to forest fires. Okay, the use of fire is banned by law. Okay, no one is allowed to put fire on the ground, but it's really hard to control that. Okay, the government doesn't have the structures needed to control fire on the ground. Okay, and the government itself is a strengthen their response capacity to fires. So do I think is the best approach to try to, well, not really. Let me give you a better view of it. So this is from a company, a private company. This is the integrated fire management approach that is taking place in a company, a huge company in Indonesia. Prevention, preparation, early detection, rapid response. But it's only focused on response. Okay, it seems it's only focused on response. So my vision, our vision of the fire, as a fire manager, I'm not a firefighter anymore. I consider myself a fire manager that try to understand the role of fire in the ecosystems. And for me, how we have to approach the fire problem in this part of the world is through what we call an integrated fire management approach. We need to have into account fire ecology. Obviously, in this part of the world is fire sensitive. So we have that in mind when we produce norms, law, and make the decisions. Okay. We need fire prevention for sure. We need fire suppression. Okay. And fire use based on fire culture. There has been fire going on in Indonesia for time. And we cannot take just that fire out of the ecosystem, out of the hands of the people using it for farming activities. We cannot do that. Okay, we need to teach them how to use it in a controlled way, in a way that it doesn't harm ecosystems around it, etc. Okay, but it's a tool, and we need to keep using it as a tool. And if you use it in a controlled way, it's going to be a great tool. Okay, so this is a little bit the approach we think will be the best, not only for Indonesia, but for other parts of the world that have this fire problem. Okay, assessment analysis, fire management goals and desired ecosystems conditions, law, policy. Okay, build this framework for building this integrated fire management approach, prevention, education, fire use, okay, response and restoration. So this is how I really think we should approach the fire problem in many parts of the world, and this is Southeast Asia for sure. To finish, I would like to put you this last presentation that it gives you an idea that we are responsible, okay, in somehow what's happening there. Obviously, trying to compete with economy growth, that it's really linked to biodiversity loss and fires in that part of the world. It's really hard, but somehow we need to make some actions. You, me, everybody around the world, we should make actions around fires and climate change for sure. So we need to think that if we degrade our forest will be easier to burn. Okay, that's what's happening in many parts of Southeast Asia. Those forests are being degraded and they're becoming a lot easier to burn. Okay, having this big fires that we have in 2015. Consume locally. Somehow, Amazon basin problems and in Southeast Asia problem is linked to global economy. Okay, what it's the palm oil that Indonesia exports is consumed all over the world. So we need to start thinking to consume more locally. Okay, so rather than buying tomatoes or buying palm oil from Indonesia or from other parts of the world, or pulp, or just try to start trying to consume more locally. Okay, it will help the climate. It will help our ecosystems. Use fire wisely. Don't just burn. Just do it in a control and wisely way. Okay, and so basically, in prevention, it's in our hands, and it's up to us. Okay, and we all need to work to stop not only wildfires but obviously climate change. Okay, we need to work from 10 years behind. We should have started. And this is it. Thank you very much. Any questions? More than happy to solve them.
Thank you very much, Juan, for your great presentation and very, very interesting. As Juan was sharing with all of you, please feel free to share all these messages with your family and friends through all your social networks using the hashtag Repsol Volunteers. And well, so now is the time for the questions and answers. And the first question will be in relation, okay, here you go. What can we do to change the economic causes that are behind the rainforest extraction in Indonesia?
Well, it's a pretty good question. So we need to, as I said to you, and I try to make a comparison of what's happening in other parts of the world, or what happened a long time ago in other parts of the world. When I came back from Indonesia, someone asked me, but what they're doing, it's really bad. They're losing their biodiversity, they're losing the rainforest that we all have in the world, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, look around you. We did the same thing. The thing is that you did not acknowledge that we did the same thing because you grew up with this ecosystem already transformed. So who are we to criticize or tell people that are willing to grow economically and have a better life standards as we do in Spain or in the United States? Who are we to tell them not to use their land on their benefit? Who are we to do that? Well, we're nobody because we did the same thing in our land. So it would be an hypocrisy to say, don't do this when we already did it before. So we need to find a balance between economic growth, land use, and ecosystem biodiversity restoration. That's for sure. Okay, we cannot keep Indonesia or any places of the world can keep moving that way. Just focus on economic growth without focusing on ecosystem impacts or loss of biodiversity. We cannot do that. We cannot just look to the other side. We need to do it in an integrated way. Okay, we need to have in mind fire as an ecosystem. We need to social development, culture, all those things together to get a balance between the needs of the human, because we need things, okay, and we need to and the ecosystems needs and space for it. So we need to find this balance. It's not easy, but we're moving forward on that for sure.
Yeah, thank you for your answer, which I believe that kind of is the conclusion, more or less, of the overall of your presentation. Yeah. So far, we don't have any questions anymore. So unless someone in the last moment would like to ask something, if not, well, we truly thank you, Juan, for sharing all this knowledge and experience that you have for the last 40 minutes have shared. And thank you for Repsol organization and for everyone to be here, to be here, yes. And well, so I think this is all for now.
Okay.